Coming through. Okay, there's always a delay to start. Anyway, we've got some good news, and it's very complicated because for the last 10 hours or so we've been sitting in the dinghy alongside Tapio, and he's finally gone, and we came back to the car park. We had to pull the anchor up and back to the club, got it all, and we get into the car. And oh, by the way, Jane says I look really ugly at the moment because I've got windburnt, so sorry about that. We get into the car, and it was a satellite call coming in from Jean-Luc, and he came up, and I'm waiting for the second word. I said, hello, Jean-Luc, everything okay? And he says, well, yes, everything's okay, but no, I've still got a problem with my mast, but I've been thinking about what I'm going to do, and he's made a decision, and it's pretty interesting. So here's the sequence of events, and it's so involved. I thought the only way to explain this to everyone is to do a live, because there's many facets to it. As you know, we've been busy, so there's a few things happened. First thing that happened is when Jean-Luc damaged his mast, he more or less assumed that was the end of his race, okay? And even to the extent that he thought he may not even carry on in Chichester class. He just thought it was all over. He's worried about the mast. He'd have to go to Chile, and that would probably be it. He might not even sail home. So on the strength of that, he decided to make a phone call. In fact, he made 2 phone calls, satellite phone calls, and I thought, well, that's it. It's probably all over. Anyway, then he started to reflect on that and thought he may be able to make a repair. So the sequence is this. He immediately moved to Chichester class once we knew he'd made those phone calls. We then advised him that said, hey, just so you know, we sent an official notice to his manager, and also notified Jean-Luc that you must stop using your phone straight away. And if you do, we will consider at that point that you may be able to stay in Chichester class and move out of that by accepting a time penalty. And so we were looking at that, but then we've been busy, too busy to explain this because we've been busy with Tapio and so on. And the long and the short of it is that now Jean-Luc, and I'll come back to that issue about the phone call and Chichester and time penalty, he's decided he's not going to go to Chile. He's had a good look at the mast. He's been on the ham radio, and their team in Les Sables d'Olonne have looked at the issues with the mast and come up with some ideas with what Jean-Luc had. They've been talking extensively in the last 24 hours by ham radio. And Jean-Luc's decision goes like this. He's going to carry on in the race. He's not going to go to Chile. He's now bound for Les Sables d'Olonne. So he's still racing. Okay, so just hold that for a minute. So if he's still racing, technically he went into the Chichester class yesterday because of the phone call that he made. You can't do that. In fact, he made 2 phone calls. So he can't do that. He's now officially applied to have that considered for a time penalty. And in principle, we'll look at that tomorrow because we've been flat out today. And that, you know, generally speaking, there's no reason why we wouldn't consider it for an 18-hour time penalty, because the phone calls that he made were literally to his wife, and there was no material gain, you know, or benefit from those phone calls. So it's highly likely that tomorrow we will give him an 18-hour time penalty, take him out of Chichester class, put him back in the GGR. So when he's back in the GGR, he's going to continue sailing. Now, his opinion of the mast is that he will make as best repair as he can and modification to that bolt going through the mast that holds his lower shrouds and carry on. Now, the worst thing that could happen is that he would lose his mast. He's not expecting that to happen, but assuming the worst, his plan B is his jury rig. Jean-Luc's jury rig is pretty simple. It's 2 spinnaker poles. It's a bipole jury rig, and his sails are specifically cut to match that jury rig. And some of you may have seen the pictures of when he was trialling his jury rig. It's one of the best of all the entrants that submitted their plans and trials for jury rigs. It's very good. He has 2 sails that he uses. They sheet perfectly. He can actually sail quite well with that. So he's very aware of the fact that if he loses his current mast, he can put his jury rig up and go for it. The second aspect that we discussed on the phone today, just before I got in the car, was that at least he can carry on and get around Cape Horn, hopefully, and the further north he goes, he's going to be closer to a port of refuge or support if he decides at any time in the future that it's not working and he needs to get into a port and do a proper repair. Because to go to Chile, he was going to have to go a long way out of the way and sail a long way back down to Cape Horn. And at that point, he may have met up with Mark Slatts or whatever and carried on, but he definitely would have been in Chichester then, because if he pulls into a port and gets material assistance like riggers and repairs and all those things, stops in a hotel, goes to a restaurant, that's what you call Chichester class. So it's all of a sudden it's turned the whole thing upside down for the following reasons. Say if Jean-Luc went to Chichester class, I sort of felt a bit sorry for Mark Slatts, because if that had happened, it would mean that Mark Slatts is now leading and so on. And if that happened, it was reminiscent to a degree. Let's say Mark Slatts carried on and wins the Golden Globe because Jean-Luc had to pull out. Remember what happened in the original Golden Globe race when Bernard Matessia decides to carry on to Tahiti and not go back to save his soul, and forever thereafter, even though Sir Robin was 17, 18 or 19 days ahead of Bernard Matessia going around Cape Horn, and that even Bernard Matessia wasn't sure whether he would have beaten Sir Robin up to the finish in England, everyone, well, let's say a lot of people think that, Sue Haley only won because Bernard Matessia pulled out, or carried on. And I sort of had that twinge for Mark because, Mark would love to win this race, there's no question. And he'd love to win it on his own terms. And so now you have a situation where Jean-Luc is back in the race. He's got a severe issue, or not a severe, he's got a severe impediment to his fast performance. But Jean-Luc's pretty cunning. He'll know when to turn it on and when to go fast. And he'll know when to not to and look after the rig. But he can't go as fast as he was before. So all of a sudden now, instead of Mark taking the lead by default, he's got a chance to hunt Jean-Luc down. And Jean-Luc knows this as well, so he's going to just go for it. Jean-Luc will do the best he can. Mark Slatts all of a sudden has got a huge objective to catch Jean-Luc, and it's a realistic opportunity. He's got 90 days or thereabouts to catch up to Jean-Luc. And how cool is that? If I was Mark, I'd be saying, yes, he can beat him on his own terms. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe Jean-Luc will get all the way to Les Sables d'Olonne and go for it. And, I made it very clear to Jean-Luc about the 18-hour time penalty. I said, we'll assess that tomorrow. If that's the case, he was sort of laughing. He says, oh, boy, if he gets all the way back to Les Sables d'Olonne, the time penalty is served only 2 or 3 days before you get to Les Sables d'Olonne. And he's thinking, oh, boy, if I get that far and still going and I'm still, he doesn't care, he'd be happy to. So he's quite prepared to accept the 18-hour time penalty. He hopes that what we'll give him, and we'll look at the facts tomorrow. But I can tell you now, the reality is that there is no reason why at this time we would probably not give him the 18-hour time penalty. It's very similar to what happened to Istvan. You'll remember the case in the Atlantic at the very early stage of the race where he made the decision to go Chichester, and then he decided he wanted to come back in, and he'd done a few little things, and he was given time penalties, in reference to that. And also in the case of Philippe Péchet, he did something similar where he made some phone calls that he shouldn't have done. We offered to give him a time penalty to bring him back in from Chichester class back to the event, but he decided not to for his own particular reasons. Ask for that penalty, and then we discovered a whole series of other phone calls. So later it was impossible for us to do that. We couldn't then give him the time penalty because there was too many phone calls that went on for a long time. But anyway, Jean-Luc is there, so for many different reasons, this is great. It's great for Jean-Luc. He's still in with a chance to try and get to the finish in Les Sables d'Olonne. He's still in the chance to try and win the Golden Globe race. Mark Slatts is still very much in the race. A huge incentive to chase down Jean-Luc, and Mark Slatts is doing it on his own terms. So I'm quite confident Mark will be screaming with joy that he's still got a chance to take it out in his own right. So that's pretty cool. And as for the back end of the fleet, I think everyone will be really happy about this. I know we are. And as I say, the reason I've done this is we're so busy here at the moment. This is GGR Central in our caravan right now. We're just trying to catch up with what's going on, and it was going to be too hard for me to put all this in writing. I figured you'd all want to know straight away. Barry will get a press release out tomorrow about Tapio finally getting underway, and about Jean-Luc coming back into the fold of the GGR in full racing mode. and you know, it's good news all round. So we're very happy about that. That's about it. We'll do a live tracker update probably tomorrow, but we've got a lot on the go tomorrow. I'll see about that. It'll be another late night for us tonight. Jane and I fly back to Les Sables d'Olonne on Saturday, so we'll be off the air for Saturday and Sunday. So we'll see you on the other side. Thanks very much. That's all it is. Bye. Good news, eh?